Okay, fine. Sorry about that. Okay. Nochmal. Parshas Emor begins with the halachas of the Kahanim. So one of the basic principles of the halachas of Kahanim is that the Kahanim that work in the Beis HaMikdash have to be unblemished. They can't have a mum. They can't have any physical disability. What does it mean, a physical disability in halacha that would make a kohen unfit for service in the Beis HaMikdash? That's obviously a complicated area in halacha. We're not going to go into that. But the basic idea is that the body of the Kahanim have to be complete. So the obvious question is why? Why? If a person, God forbid, is born with some physical handicap or some physical flaw, that doesn't mean at all that he can't be a tzaddik. Obviously, it doesn't mean that Hashem doesn't love him. In fact, the truth is that in halacha, in the poskim, it's discussed that it could very well be that to have someone who's handicapped, it's actually a good thing for him to daven for the yomid. Because someone with such a disability, someone who's physically disabled, has some blemish in his body, is generally considered to be someone that's humble. Right? He's most probably going to be a humble person. It's going to be most probably someone who is very much feeling connected to Hashem and so on. So it's preferable for him to daven for the Yomid. So why is it that by the Kahanim of the Beis HaMikdash, it's the opposite? You need someone who's physically perfect. That's number one. Number two, in this week's parasha as well, we have the mitzvah of Sefiras Haomer. So since we're holding during Sefiras Haomer, right, this is the time that we're in, and the parasha discusses Sefiras Haomer, so we have to talk about Sefiras Haomer. So there's within the context, within the truth of the topic really of Sefiras Haomer, there's a number of things to talk about. First of all, if a person wants to define this time, this is a bridge between Pesach and Shavuos, right? We're leading up to Matan Torah, to the giving of the Torah. So the question is, if this point in time is to bring us up to the level where we're going to be able to receive the Torah in our lives, in our personal lives when it comes to Shavuos, then what should the main avodah of this time period be? What should be the main focus of this time? It should be learning, right? That should be the main focus of this time. But the truth is, it's not like that. We all know that what's the main focus of this time period is the avodah of tikkun amidas, of one's fixing one's character traits, aligning one's traits to the proper way, working on Ahavas Yisrael, loving other Jews, and so on. And this is manifested in a very, very extreme way. Famous Gemara in Yevamis. Gemara says Rabbi Akiva had 24,000 talmidim. Right? Famous Gemara. If you just use your imagination for a second to imagine that 24,000 students of Rabbi Akiva. We're not talking about school children over here. We're talking about students of Rabbi Akiva. And the Gemara says they all died in one time period between Pesach and Shavuos. Why? They all passed away between Pesach and Shavuos. Because there was something lacking in their Ahavas Yisrael. There was something lacking in their interpersonal relationships, in their midas. And the Gemara says, the world was completely desolate of Torah. So therefore, until Rabbi Akiva got up and he was mechazik himself, he strengthened himself, and he went to the south of Eretz Yisrael, and he began to start teaching again. And from those 5 Talmidim that he started teaching again after everything was destroyed, from those Talmidim, the whole world of Torah comes. All of Torah Sheba'al Peh comes from those students. So clearly, from this story, we see clearly that this time period is designated to work on one's midos. And Ahavas Yisrael, loving another Jew. So the question is why? How is that specifically a hachana, a preparation for Shavuos? If anything, learning should be a preparation for Shavuos. But the truth is like this: we have to talk about Ahavas Yisrael. We have to talk about Ahavas Yisrael. So, in the topic of Ahavas Yisrael, the topic of loving another Jew, and so on, there's a very obvious, famous Gemara that comes to mind. The Gemara in Shabbos. Gemara says that a non-Jew once came to Shammai. We all know the story, right? He came to Shammai and he asked Shammai, "Convert me on one condition: that you teach me the entire Torah standing on one foot." So Shammai takes a ruler and chases him away. What type of ridiculous thing is this? The entire Torah on one foot. You know how big the Torah is? Clearly you're trying to just make fun and make trouble. Then he goes to Hillel and he has the same request: convert me on condition that you teach me the entire Torah on one foot. So what does Hillel say? Unbelievable. What you wouldn't want done to you, don't do to another. Right? Basically, love another Jew like yourself. Said Hillel, that's Kol HaTorah Kula, that's the entire Torah. Idach Pirushihi. The rest of Torah is just a commentary on that. It's a little Gemara, now go and learn the commentary. That's what all of Torah is. So if Hillel says such a thing, clearly it's true, and there's a meaning to that. It wasn't just something that he was trying to placate this potential ger. So what does it mean that the entire Torah is summarized in Ahavta L'Reach Kamaycha? We understand how mitzvahs between man and man could be summarized with the V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. How are mitzvahs between man and God connected with the V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha? Putting on tefillin is somehow V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. Shabbos, kashrus, learning, how is that V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha? Obvious question, everyone's bothered by this. I don't know if many people have an answer to it that's satisfactory, but that's the obvious question. Another question, it's a very similar question. Rabbi Akiva. Gemara says, Kula Libid Rabbi Akiva, all Mishnayos, all Brises, all Gemara, everything we have, all of Torah Sheba'al Peh comes from Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva is the Amud, he is the pillar of Torah Sheba'al Peh. He embodies Torah. Rabbi Akiva is the embodiment of Torah. Moshe Rabbeinu in Har Sinai, right? Chazal tell us in the Gemara Menachos, Moshe Rabbeinu saw a vision of Rabbi Akiva, and Rabbi Akiva's Torah learning was so great that Moshe Rabbeinu asked Hashem that the Torah should be given through him, that he should be the one in my place giving the Torah. And Hashem didn't say, you're wrong, you're greater. That's what Hashem said. Hashem said, Kachel machshol fanai, this is what I want, don't ask any questions. Rabbi Akiva is unbelievable. So Rabbi Akiva, who knows everything, Rabbi Akiva, who incorporates within himself all of Torah Sheba'al Peh, what does he say? Rabbi Akiva, v'yahavta l'reacha kamocha, zeh kal gadol b'Torah. What is the greatest principle of all of Torah? V'yahavta l'reacha kamocha. So what does that mean? And it's specifically that one person called Rabbi Akiva that teaches that principle, that v'yahavta l'reacha kamocha is everything. It's his students that clearly failed in that, on their level, they failed in living up to that standard, and because of that they were punished at this time, which somehow is connected to fixing one's midas, to fixing this midah of Avos Yisrael. So this is the question. What's the inyan over here? What's going on over here? What's the inyan of Avos Yisrael? Okay, so things like this. If fixing Avos Yisrael, fixing one's character traits, if Jews getting along with each other is designated as the main hachana, the main preparation to receive the Torah, then we have to redefine what Torah is, right? Because to us it doesn't seem like they would go together. How is Avos Yisrael a preparation to receive the Torah? So we have to understand what is Torah. What is Torah? So there's a rule in Maharal. Maharal writes this in many places, or Ramchal, many places also as well. There's a rule. If you want to understand something well, then the best way to understand it is to look at its opposite. When you figure out its opposite, then you could tell the extremes clarify each other. You know, you want to appreciate what does it mean light, then you go somewhere really pitch black, you could then appreciate and understand what light is, and vice versa. So we want to understand what is Torah. What is Torah about? What is the essence of what Torah is? So we have to figure out what's the opposite of Torah, and then from the opposite of Torah we'll be able to then see what is Torah. So what's the opposite of Torah? What's the opposite of Torah? It's an interesting question. What's the opposite of Torah? So it's the Gemara in Avodah Zarah. The Gemara says, famous Gemara, Shis al fishnin havi alma. The Gemara says that Hashem created this world in such a way where the world that we see with our eyes, the world that this era is lasting 6,000 years. From the beginning of creation until the beginning of a new era, 6,000 years. These 6,000 years are divided into three parts. Says the Gemara, Shnei alpayim toyu. The first 2,000 years from the beginning of creation until the emergence of Avram Avinu, that's called 2,000 years of chaos. Shnei alpayim toyu. 2,000 years of chaos. From Avram Avinu, the next 2,000 years, which ends roughly at the time when the Talmud was finally edited, that's called Shnei Alpayim Torah. That's 2,000 years of Torah. From that end of that 2,000 years till the end of the entire era of this world, that's called Shnei Alpayim Mashiach. 2,000 years where there's a strong potential for Mashiach to come. So hopefully Be'ezus Hashem throughout this year we'll be able to understand these three periods in a very, very significant way. But right now, the Gemara clearly is contrasting between the first 2,000 and the second 2,000, right? Until Avram Avinu comes, the world is empty of Torah, right? The world is empty of Torah. So what is that called? 2,000 years of chaos. And then when Avram Avinu comes and starts teaching about the oneness of Hashem and starts bringing light into the world, the light of Torah into the world, that's called 2,000 years of Torah. So what's the opposite of Torah? The opposite of Torah is toyu, is chaos. Okay, so what does that mean? Okay, so to understand this inyan, I want to talk about something which is it's a very, very deep inyan. It's a very, very deep inyan. And if there's any misunderstanding, it's due to my inability to clarify these concepts. But try to pay attention to the best you can. There's a teaching in the Arizal. The Arizal taught, and it's rooted in the Tikkun Zohar. You ever notice in Parshas Vayishlach, there's one of those parshas that gets very much overlooked, and like you just read through it, whatever, the Chazan, the Valkar reads through it, you don't pay much attention to it. But in truth, the Arizal Torah, based on the Tikkun Izar, it's mamish one of the deepest sections in all of Torah. The end of Parshas V'yishlach, after Yaakov Avinu and the family, everyone's settled after the confrontation with Esav. So the Torah goes on a whole thing talking about the generations of Esav and the history of Esav. And the pasuk says over there that they were malachim of Esav. They are kings. Historically, they were kings of Esav. And the pasuk goes through, this guy was a king and he reigned and then he died. And then another guy was the king of Esav and he died. Another guy, v'yimlech v'yamas, he king, he ruled, he died, he ruled, he died. And the pasuk says, it goes through all this, 8 kings, lifnei malach melech lifnei Yisrael, before the Jewish kingdom became established. The Arizal taught that rooted in that parsha, concealed in that parsha, is one of the deepest mysteries of creation. One of the deepest mysteries of creation is the following thing, on our level. Hashem created the world in such a way where there's 2 different constructs, there's 2 different parts of reality. There's one part of reality which is called the world of Tohu, the world of chaos, Tohu. And there's the opposite of that. The opposite of that is called the Olam HaTikun, the world of rectification, the world of unification. What does that mean? So here's our thought. I'm going to do my best to bring this down to our level. The Rizal taught the following thing. All misery, all suffering, all gullus, all death, all sickness, all problems in this world come from that spiritual place that's called the world of chaos. Tohu means the following thing. Chaos means where every little piece is scattered, where every little aspect of a person's, personality, where every single thing in the universe seems independent, seems disconnected from one big holistic being, and just everything is doing its own thing. That's death. What happens to a body after a person passes away? It falls apart, and literally it decays, and the pieces fall apart. That's what happens, right? Death means, and what is exile? Exile is you have the Jewish people, and we're scattered to 1,000,000 different pieces. Tohu, chaos, means Hashem created the world in such a way where there is a force. There's a force in nature called Tohu. This force in nature, called Tohu, brings into a person's life the feeling of scatteredness. It brings into a person's life a concept where everything feels disconnected and disjointed, where everything feels completely, unconnected to anything bigger, very small. Any feeling that a person ever experiences where he feels very small and he can't get out of a certain prison that he maybe put himself in or other people put him into. That's coming from the world of chaos, the world of Tohu. Tohu means, in the Kisya Arizal, in the writings of Arizal, the world of Tohu is described as nekudos, as dots. Little dots. And each dot doesn't feel connected to each other. And the person that's living in such a world feels very scattered. So such a person wakes up in the morning and he davens the shachris, but it doesn't affect his day. And then he goes on to work, whatever it is. So there's a point of light. There's one point of light called putting on tefillin. Okay, fine. Then there's a whole lot of darkness when he's at work. And then there's another point of light where he gives $1 to tzedakah. Another point of light. But life itself is just a bunch of dots. There's nothing bringing it all together. There's no holism. There's no big body that all these individual pieces are coming together into. And if a person's Yiddishkeit, if a person's life is living a life of Tohu, of chaos, where everything is disjointed, then even if he experiences points of holiness, nekudos, if he experiences points of holiness, those points will never make him satisfied, they'll never make him feel whole. The Gemara says, for example, that the Jewish people are compared to a pomegranate, right? It's a famous teaching. The Gemara says, because afilu paishi Yisrael, because even the sinners of the Jewish people are full of mitzvahs like a pomegranate. It's full of seeds, right? So why a pomegranate? So all the commentaries say, it's a very famous word, the commentaries say because the difference between a pomegranate and, let's say, an apple is that the flesh of an apple is one big unit. It's one big piece. A pomegranate is full of seeds, but each seed is self-contained. They don't come together to create one big flesh. A Paisha Yisrael, a Jewish person who's living in that world of sin, living in that world of chaos, then even if he has good points within him, But those good points never come together. They never seem to be part of anything bigger. They're just different points that he comes in contact with. So right now he davens a mincha, but it doesn't affect his life. He opens a sefer, but it doesn't do anything. He gives a little tzedakah, doesn't change him. A bunch of nekudas, a bunch of points. When a person is living in such a way, and he's connected to the world, God forbid, of chaos, of tohu, then the difficulty is not only that those points never change him to a degree where he becomes a whole person, but ultimately speaking, the darkness that's contained between those points, is unbelievably difficult to deal with, unbelievably heavy, and ultimately it'll overtake him. That's the difficulty of chaos. See, what happened in those first 2,000 years of the world until Avram Avinu came? There were points of holiness. Noach was a tzaddik, right? Mezushalach was a tzaddik. Chanoich was a big tzaddik. A lot of tzaddikim. So why was that not considered the beginning of Torah? Because there was a world of chaos. Because there were points of holiness, but those points never came together. They never revealed in the world how everything is one big breath of Hashem. That was the difference. He had little points of holiness, a tzaddik here, a tzaddik there. But never at all did these tzaddikim reveal in the world how everything is one big, unbelievable body that has the light of Hashem, the breath of Hashem contained within it. That's what it means, Toyu. That's what it means, Toyu. In the writings of the Arizal as well, animals, behemoths are very much connected with the world of Torah, with the world of chaos, with this world. Why? So the truth is, if you think about it, animals don't, when was the last time you saw cows get together and create a congress to create a civilization? It doesn't work like that. Animals, even if animals do get together in a certain pack, whatever the case may be, it's all for the individual, really. At the end of the day, it's not, they don't have some collective, there is such a metzias when it comes to bugs. It's an interesting thing that bugs, some have like complex societies. But it's funny, as you get higher on the chain, on the food chain, within animals, they become less and less like that. It's an interesting thing. But anyway, the Maharal writes the following thing. The word behema is made of two words, which is ba ma. What does ba ma mean? Ba ma means that everything that exists, it's right here. Everything that's there within the world of this animal, it's right here. An animal means, behema means toyu. Behema means chaos because there's no aspect of a behema which is part of something bigger. Everything that exists is right there. Everything that exists is right contained in this animal, and there's nothing, it's not part of anything bigger. It doesn't feel part of anything bigger. It's not involved in trying to create anything bigger. Like I said, even ants and bugs like that have complex societies, the purpose of those societies is not to make the world a better place. That's not what their function is. They're just doing it because it aids in each individual ant living, so it's kedai for us to get together and to build a colony. But is the purpose of the colony, is there plans in the queen ant's mind to bring peace on earth, to somehow make the world a better place? It's not like that. There's no big she'ifas, there's no big goals, there's no big dreams in a behemoth. Bo ma. It is what it is. See, an Adam is not like that. What does the word Adam come from? The word Adam is connected with the word Dimyan, which means imagination. An Adam, a human being, is not like that. An Adam is created in such a way where it's not Ba ma, it's not everything in the universe I already have finished. It's not like that. An Adam is a creature that Hashem created with the conscious of imagining bigger, of wanting bigger, of seeing himself as part of something bigger. So we have the world of Tayu. So Tayu brings exile, Tayu brings darkness, Tayu brings death. Everything difficult in life comes from the world of Tayu, where there's disjointedness, where the world feels disconnected, where this tzaddik doesn't seem to have an effect on that Rasha, and this part of my life doesn't seem to have an effect on that part of my life, and my life b'chlal feels disconnected from Hashem. It's all part of the world of Tayu, of chaos, of nekudas, of dots. Nothing coming together in one big body. Then Avram Avinu comes on the scene and begins the new era, which is called the 2,000 years of Torah. So what's Torah? What's Torah then? If the opposite of Torah is Tayu, of chaos, of disjointedness, then what is Torah? So according to Arizal, there's another aspect to creation. The other aspect of creation is the world of tikkun, of rectification. What does rectification mean? Rectification means that the job of a Jew, what Hashem did in the world is such that at the same time there's such a thing as chaos, there's such a thing as tayu, which brings death and sadness and misery and separatism and individualism and all that ugliness of nekudas, of dots, of separate pieces of a person's life. That's tayu. At the same time, there is a light in the world which is called the light of tikkun, the light of rectification. There is such a thing that somehow a person has within him the ability of seeing beyond the tayu, of penetrating through the cloud of chaos and realizing the truth. And the truth is that everything in the entire universe, from the highest level of the highest world of Atzilus, from the highest spiritual level to the lowest of the lowest of the lowest, from the highest Jew to the lowest Jew, it's all one big body. That's what tikkun means. That's what Torah means. Torah means when Hashem gave the Torah to the Jewish people, it wasn't just a question of giving us a handbook, a guide of how to live your life in order to avoid Gehenna and to have some reward in the next world, whatever that's supposed to be like. That's not what Torah is. Torah is the light of the clarity of tikkun, of unification, of rectification. Torah means Hashem gave us the ability of perceiving, of seeing the world for what it truly is, which is literally one big body. In the writings of the Arizal, this is something that's very, very pushed and very obvious, that all of the universes come together literally in the image of a human body, on a spiritual level. That's why the Torah itself has 248 positive, 365 negative mitzvahs, right? All corresponding to the limbs of a human body. See, the human body is not separate pieces. The human imagination, like I mentioned before, is not separate pieces. It's not a behemoth where everything is here and there's no concept of anything building on each other and building and developing. That's not what a human being is. When a baby is born, it's not boma, it's not done. It's the opposite. It's very far from being done. There's a development, there's a growth, there's a connection that's made when a family and a society and so on. So the Torah itself is modeled after a human body. Understand this, the Torah means Hashem gave us the way of fixing chaos, of bringing all those nekudas, all those different points together into one big body, and to reveal that the entire universe, as crazy as it might seem, as dark as the universe might seem, it's not disjointed. It's not disjointed. And there is one big body that's called the universe. And this one big body, it's true there's difficult parts, but at the end of the day, as difficult as a person might be, if a person's arm is bothering him and so on, there's no thought of cutting off his arm because it's part of one big body. And as miserable as his toe might be making him, he still looks at his toe as part of himself. Torah gives a Jew the clarity of seeing through the chaos and seeing how everything in the universe is part of something bigger. That's what Torah does. Torah makes a person big. It makes a person grow from an animal. That when we left Mitzrayim, we're counting Sefiras Haomer, right? So what's the Haomer? The Haomer was a sacrifice that was brought the second day of Pesach. The sacrifice that was brought in the Beis Hamikdash was made of barley, right? On Shavuos we bring another sacrifice of shtei alecha made of wheat. So the Sfarim all point this out, that sa'ir and barley in Chazal is always the main food for animals. The main animal fodder was barley, and wheat obviously is the main food for human beings. So the Sfarim all say that from the beginning of Sefiras Haomer, from Mitzrayim to Matan Torah, meant the evolution, so to speak, to evolve from an animal to a person. What does that mean? What does that mean? What does Mitzrayim mean? Mitzrayim means constriction. Mitzrayim means smallness. Mitzrayim means tayu, means chaos. It means disjointedness. It means not being able to see beyond your own personal life. Not being able to see how everything is part of something bigger. Not being interested in something bigger. There are people like that they aren't interested in caring about anything bigger outside of themselves. And even within themselves, they don't really know who they are to begin with. Very, very small, very, very constricted. That's the world of chaos, where everything is by themselves. Everyone's independent, and everyone's just doing their thing without realizing that there's something much bigger going on in the world and within themselves. That's Mitzrayim. So the carbon that's brought when we left Mitzrayim is the carbon of animal food, because that's where we were. That's sometimes where we are. That world of behema, of bama, of tayu, of chaos. The job of Sefiras Haomer, the job of a Jew to somehow get to Matan Torah means to evolve from being a behema to the world of tikkun. Somehow to recognize this truth, that everything in the world, every single piece of reality is part of something bigger. It's part of one big unit. It's not an independent thing. This blade of grass doesn't exist on its own. This tree doesn't exist on its own. This Jew doesn't exist on its own. Everything is part of something bigger. That's what it means tikkun. That's what it means Torah. That's what it means in Adam. A human being the body of a human being is iskalulos. It means interconnection. It means the arm is connected to the mind, and the mind is connected to the foot, and the foot is connected to the kidney. Everything is connected to something. And we're all connected with this one big body. And this one big body spans the highest level of reality to the lowest level of reality. It's all one big unit. And that's what it means tikkun. That's what it means tikkun. That, according to this, we understand very well many things that took place by Har Sinai. We have a famous Gemara. And that's not a Gemara, really, for Medrash. It's hinted to in the Gemara. Gemara says that Hashem went to all the nations of the world and offered them the Torah, right? So we all know this, right? He went to Esav and he offered them Torah. What did Esav say? No, Maksiva, what does it say? So Hashem said, Lo Sirtzach, not interested. Goes to Yishmael, what does it say in it? Lo Sinaf, not interested. And this is how it went. Eventually went to Klal Yisrael, and what do we say? Na'asav and Ishma. So when a person reads that Gemara, what's the first thing to strike him? What do you learn from that Gemara? What you learn from that Gemara is that the Goyim were what they were looking to see, they're investigating, not taking Hashem's word for it, that the Torah is good. The Jewish people went on blind faith, we accepted whatever Hashem said. There's definitely true, that's for sure true. But if you think about it in a deeper way, what do you also see from this Gemara? What was the perspective of the nations of the world when they were looked at Torah? What was their perspective? They saw pieces. Even when they looked at Torah, which is the embodiment of tikkun, of rectification, they saw chaos. So yes, what does it say in it? So Hashem responded, a little piece, lo sirtzach. A little piece, lo sinaf. They didn't have the ability of seeing the Torah for what it was. It's only the Jewish people that looked at the entire Torah and said, Na'asav v'nishma, we'll do whatever you say. It was when we said Na'asav v'nishma, it wasn't just a question of blind faith. What we were saying to Hashem was that we recognize what Torah is. That the Torah is the antidote to chaos. The Torah is the opposite of chaos. The Torah means tikkun. The Torah means the human being, the human form. It means everything coming together in one big form. In one big, by the recognition, the revelation that everything is one. That's what it means, Torah. Now this is the most amazing thing. After the 2,000 years of Torah, right? 2,000 years of Torah, Avram Avinu began teaching what it means to be a Jew, right? What it means to have Hashem. And then what happened was eventually we have the Har Sinai and so on. By the way, that's why on Har Sinai, the Gemara says that there was all big unity, right? That's what we're talking about, seeing everything as one. Then what happens after the 2,000 years of Torah? Comes the 2,000 years of Mashiach. What does Mashiach mean? Mashiach means this. Gula, what does redemption mean? Redemption means, Mashiach means that what is Torah? Again, Torah means that unity, means the rectification, it means the opposite of chaos, where everything is one big entity, one big body, all and the breath of Hashem is giving life to that one big body which contains grass and plants and animals, everything. Everything in this one big body is being infused with Hashem's life. That's what Torah means. Mashiach means that idea, which remains theoretical, which remains only in the heart of a Jew and in the mind of a Jew, Mashiach means that you feel it, that you see it, there's a mice that I mentioned before, that Rabbi Chaim Volozhin, when he described what it would be like for Mashiach to come, to experience what's going to be the day like when Mashiach comes. So part of the whole story is that he described that he's going to look outside the window and he's going to notice that the same tree that's been outside of his house for the past 50 years is going to look so much more beautiful. The leaves are just going to pop. That's what it means. Mashiach means that concept, which is Torah, becomes obvious to the naked eye. That's what Mashiach means. So, now this is an amazing thing. There's one aspect of Torah, there's one chelik of Torah, which more than any other chelik of Torah brings focus to this aspect of everything in the universe being one, more than any other chelik of Torah. And that chelik, that portion of Torah is called Kabbalah. That's what Kabbalah is. Kabbalah, more than any other aspect of Torah, brings to the surface, brings to the learner of Kabbalah, this recognition of how everything is mamish one. That's what all of Kabbalah is about. All of the writings of the Rizal, everything is about this idea, how all the universe is from the beginning, from the top to the bottom, is all one big entity, one big construct, one big body. And this body has different parts. There's the head, and there's the feet, and the heart, and the arms, and so on. That's what Kabbalah is about. The Arizal came to the world at that time to usher in, the Arizal himself said this, that he's here to usher in the time period of Mashiach, to usher in, to hasten, to make things move. because the Arizal, as the greatest Makubal to ever live, since Rav Shimon Bar Yochai, the Arizal, when he revealed his Torah, when he revealed the writings of the Arizal, what he did more than anything else was bring to the forefront of how Torah itself is, how Torah reveals, how Pnimis is, how Kabbalah reveals, how Mamish everything is one, Mamish one. Hashem is one, His name is one, everything is one. That's what Kabbalah is about. That's what Pnimis Torah is about. That's what Lag B'Omer is about, right? Lag B'Omer, in the middle of the Sefira, we have the Yontif of Lag B'Omer, which is about Rishon Baruch about Kabbalah. What is Kabbalah doing? What are we doing over here? And the students of Rabbi Akiva stopped dying by Lag B'Omer. What Kabbalah is, what Rishon Baruch Hu means, what that Arizal meant, what they revealed was that don't think Torah is just a little manual that tells you how to live. It tells you how to tie your shoes, how to go to the bathroom, how to keep Shabbos. It's much deeper than that. What Kabbalah, what Rishon Baruch Hu, what the Arizal revealed was that when you're tying your shoe, when Halacha tells you about how to tie your shoe, you have no idea what's taking place. You have no idea what unifications are happening when you tie your shoe properly. You have no idea what's happening when you make a bracha properly. You have any idea? But no, without Kabbalah, without that inner perspective, without the soul of Torah, then all you see is just a handbook of how to live. And you can look at Torah the same way the nations of the world looked at Torah. Maksiv, what does it say? It says this, it says that, different points, different dots. So it tells me how to keep Shabbos, it tells me how to keep kashrus, and if I do those stuff, it doesn't change me necessarily. Okay, how many Jews out there, you can learn Chosh and Mishpat, but you can still be a Ganef, right? You can learn the halachas of Shabbos, and you can still be Mechal Shabbos, right? It doesn't change you. Why doesn't it change you? Why doesn't it change such a person? Because when he's learning those halachas, when he's learning those things, he's learning it in the world of chaos. He's learning it in such a way where everything is individual points. It's not coming together. He's not seeing the soul that brings it all together. See, if God forbid there's a body without a soul, then there's nothing that you see there that really brings everything together. There's an arm and there's a foot and there's an arm. Nothing brings it together. The soul brings the body together. It's the soul that gives life to all the limbs. It's the soul that brings all the limbs together and brings them to one function, to one tachlis, to one goal. The same thing is with Torah. If a person's connection to Torah is superficial, if a person's connection to Torah is just purely do this, don't do that, do this, don't do that, then he's not connecting to the soul of Torah. He's not connecting to what Torah really is in its inner state. He's connecting to Torah from the perspective of chaos. And it'll be like a pomegranate with seeds and all the different seeds, but it's not coming together. What Rishon Bar Yochai revealed, what the Arizal began to reveal, was the soul of Torah. I'm not saying we have to be Mekubal to learn Kabbalah. That's not my point. The point is when a person believes in what Rishon Bar Yochai and the Arizal taught, and they try to live a life of depth. They try to live a life more than just do this, don't do that. They try to learn Torah in a deep way. And it means to learn halach in a deep way, to learn Gemara in a deep way, all the details of Torah, to learn it in a big way, to believe and to try to understand how every single detail of halach is somehow part of something bigger. Before Mashiach comes, all the learning nowadays before Mashiach comes is all about this. It's all about seeing the bigness in the details. Right? Anyone has any background in in learning Chaim Soloveitchik or these types of things? It's all about lumdis. It's all about Rishon Shkab. All these things. It's all about trying to see unbelievable big things in the smallest little piece of Gemara. That's what it's about. That's what it's about. And before Mashiach comes, there's going to be a push to this. The Arizal started that. The Arizal brought to the forefront this concept that there's a soul of Torah. That behind the scenes, within all these little points, there's something that's bringing it all together. And when a person keeps the individual points of halakha, the individual points of Torah, you're connecting yourself and connecting the world to something unbelievably deep. Now this is the most amazing thing. In the 1700s, Hashem sent to the world 4 different neshamas. And these 4 different neshamas took what the Arizal started and mamish brought the world so much closer to Mashiach. Those 4 neshamas were the Rashash, Shalom Sharabi, from the Sephardi Mekubal, one of the greatest Sephardi Mekubalim of all time. You have the Ramchal, Moshe Chaim Latzato, the Vilna Gaon, the Gra, and the Baal Shem Tov. Each one of them took what the Arizal began and mamish accelerated it. For people like us, just to explain a little bit, and then just you have this in the back of your mind, and eventually when all of you become big Mekubalim, you'll be able to appreciate this much more. The Rashash, the ending of the Rashash, what the Rashash did was, he took the writings of the Arizal, and he developed a system of kavanas, of you have to start as kavanot. Right? What does that mean? It means the Rizal talked about how all the universe is one big thing. The Rizal showed in his teachings how all the universe, from the beginning to from the top to the bottom, is part of this one big, most unbelievable body. Unbelievable body that's infused with the Spirit of Hashem, that's infused with the soul of Hashem. What the Rashash did was that he took those concepts from the Rizal that still remain a little bit aloof, not a little bit, very much aloof, and very much out there, and not very practical. He taught us, those people that are on the level to do this, that when a person physically does a mitzvah, when you physically do a mitzvah, have in mind to connect to this part of the universe, to have in mind to somehow bring all the universes together in such a way. When a person puts on tzitzis, the kavanas of the Arizal, the kavanas of the Rashash mean that the ability of a Jew to take those unbelievable mysteries and to reveal them through keeping mitzvahs. That's what it means. It's an unbelievable tikkun, an unbelievable unification, unbelievable fixing of chaos, what the Rashash did. The Rashash revealed that you could take all the teachings of the Rizal, that most unbelievable esoteric oneness that's revealed in the universe through the teachings of the Rizal, and you could feel it and you could mamish live it when you do an individual mitzvah like putting on tzitzis. And you could bring all that oneness together when you do an individualized mitzvah like putting on tefillin. Unbelievable. That's what the Rashash did. Now in the world of Ashkenaz, we had other tikkunim, other unifications that were taking place at the same time. Unbelievable. You have the Gra. The Gra, the main Inyan of the Gra, I shouldn't say the main Inyan, one of the biggest Inyanim of the Gra and the Ramchal together, it's one Mahalach, was to take the teachings of the Rizal, the same idea. They're all about taking the teachings of the Rizal, the oneness that the Rizal talked about, and showing it in practical terms. Showing it how even in this physical world, it's part of that oneness. That's what they're all about. So again, like the Rashash did that in the world of individual mitzvahs. What the Gra did was showed that in the history of the world. The writings of the Gra are full, and especially his student Rabbi Yitzchak Eizachover, it's full of this, of showing how this unbelievable universe, the spiritual universe that the Rizal talked about, mamish exists down here, and it's revealed throughout the course of history. And the Rizal and the Gra talked about how what took place, the destruction of the second Beis Hamikdash, that time period corresponding to this Inyan in the writings of the Rizal, and this time period corresponding to this other Inyan in the writings of the Rizal, and so on, to reveal the oneness of Hashem, to reveal this one big body in the world of history, in the history of the world. And the Baal Shem Tov finally came to reveal the oneness of reality, the teaching of the Rizal, and what in the individual soul of a Jew. That's what Chassidus is about. It's about taking the teachings of the Rizal, unbelievable oneness that the Rizal talked about that exists in the universe, and showed how mamish exists in the heart of every single Jew. And when a Jew feels for Hashem, when a Jew feels anything positive in his Yiddishkeit, you have no idea what's going on in the higher world. That's what the Baal Shem Tov is about. That each one in their corner, the Rashash, the Gra, the Baal Shem Tov, the Ramchal, each one of them, what they were doing was pushing Mashiach. They were bringing Mashiach closer. They were taking that oneness that the Rizal talked about, the soul of Torah, what Torah is, the opposite of chaos, and they were showing mamish lamaisa. How does that work in our world? Whether it be involved in keeping mitzvahs, individual mitzvahs, whether it's a question of seeing the oneness of everything throughout history, or seeing the oneness of everything in every single Jew's soul. So we have to go back to what we started. So after all of this, so now we have this time period of Sefiras Haomer. Sefira comes at a time where we're supposed to prepare ourselves for Torah. But what type of Torah are we supposed to prepare ourselves for? Not a Torah of chaos, not a Torah of Tayu, but a Torah of Tikkun. A Torah of oneness, where we're able to see how everything is one, to have the eyes to be able to see beyond the surface, to be able to see how everything is coming together. There is no greater hachana, there is no greater vessel to receive that type of Torah than a Jew who has Avos Yisrael. If you see other Jews, if you see the entire Jewish people, if we see the entire Jewish people as one big body, then such a person who sees the Jewish people as one big body, such a person, Hashem will give him the Torah which reveals the entire universe as one big body. That's what Avos Yisrael is about. The depth of Avos Yisrael is, Gemara says, the vessel to receive all the goodness, all the oneness of Hashem is the vessel called peace. That's what it means. What it means is that only a heart that looks at the Jewish people and sees one big nation, that sees one big body with individual pieces, but are not disconnected, not disjointed, individual pieces but one big body, such a heart can receive the Torah of Nasa v'Nishma on Har Sinai. Such a Jew can receive the Torah that's the opposite of chaos. Such a Jew can receive the Torah that's a Torah of oneness. That's the Torah of Mashiach. That's what Avos Yisrael is about. So this whole time period is about obviously Yisrael. It's about building within oneself the eyes to see how everything is one, how every Jew is one, and mistakes that a Jew might make, and the difficulties that a Jew causes another Jew. It's like if your left arm hurts you. You don't think about cutting it off. It's part of one big body. The more we could fix our vision, the more we can see the world in such a way, the more Torah we'll be able to receive, the real Torah that we're able to receive on Shavuot. That's what it's about. That's why in the middle of Lag Baimer, that's when in the middle of Sefiras there's Lag Baimer. It's all about this, because what Lag Baimer is about, the same thing. What Lag Baimer, what the Rizal is about is revealing this point, this oneness. So I mentioned also, why is it that Kahanim have to be perfect? Why do the bodies of Kahanim have to be perfect? So the answer is, because what the Kahanim do in the Beis Hamikdash, we'll have to do this very, very quickly. What the Kahanim do in the Beis Hamikdash by bringing sacrifice, you know what a sacrifice is? What's a sacrifice? Most sacrifices were animals, right? Behemoths. What's a behemoth? Like I mentioned, behemoth is the world of chaos. Behemoth is the world of Bama, that everything that exists in the world of the animal is right here. Nothing outside of itself. It's disjointed. One animal lives a solitary life, disconnected from the other. And even if they happen to live together, they're not really thinking about each other, really. They're not thinking about, dreaming about making the world a better place. Bama, everything is just here. Different points, completely disjointed. A carbon means taking that world of chaos, taking that world of disjointedness, of smallness, of exile, of death, and bringing it up to Hashem. And bringing it to the world of Tikkun, bringing it to the world of rectification. It's an unbelievable thing. So Dafka, the only people that are able to do that in the Beis Hamikdash, are physically taking an animal, which is the embodiment of that world of chaos, and somehow connecting it and elevating it and bringing it together by connecting it to the world of Tikkun, is only a Kain who has a complete body. That's what it means. Because the image, the form of the human body represents the world of Tikkun. Represents the world of unification, the opposite of the world of the animal. So the only one that's going to be able to uplift and to raise and to fix the world of chaos, which is represented by the animal, is going to be the Kayin who has the complete body, which is the manifestation, the embodiment of the world of Tikkun. That's what's going on. It's an unbelievable yichud that's taking place. When a Kayin, with the body of a human being, with the full body of a human being, goes to an animal and uplifts it and sacrifices it and burns it on the Mizbeach back to Hashem, there's a yichud, there's a union that's taking place. There's a fixing. There's a revelation that's taking place. There's a bringing together of different parts. There's a right that instead of the world of chaos taking over the world of Tikkun is beginning to take over the world of chaos. That's what the Kahanim were about. That's what the mitzvah is. That's why Kahanim have to have a perfect body. So just to end, I want to read to you. This is an unbelievable thing. Rav Kook, just mamish for 2 minutes. At the end of Aras HaTorah, Rav Kook writes the following thing. Rav Kook in many places talked about the last generation before Mashiach comes. He talks about our generation. And he said, if you want to know the main character trait of what our generation is about, what makes us unique over any other generation, is the following thing. One of the things is the following thing. Despite all the craziness that we all go through, and there's a lot of craziness that we go through, there has never been a generation that has been as altruistic as our generation. There's never been a generation that cares as much about fixing the world as our generation. It's never been such a thing. Historically, whatever, you do your thing, you go to work 9 to 5, and you make your money and you go home finished. Never before was there a need to find meaning in a person's job, right? If you speak to someone from 100 years ago, not even 100 years ago, speak to, let's say, one of your grandparents, you're figuring out what you want to do with yourself, right? What makes you happy? Is being a lawyer going to really make me happy, and am I going to become satisfied and fulfilled with such a life? You speak to your grandfather, your great-grandfather, but he's going, what are you talking about? Whatever, you make money, that's it, finished. What do you don't have to find meaning in that. What do you There's never been such a generation where every single aspect of life, every little different point, every little piece, every nakuda, every point has to be part of something bigger. There's never been such a thing. So Rav Kook he said the reason for that is because as you go closer to Mashiach means the revelation of the oneness, right? Mashiach means the completion of this whole process of we went from Tayu to Torah and finally with Mashiach to reveal the soul of Torah, to reveal the oneness of reality to the naked eye. That we should mamish live a life where everything is one. So the generation before Mashiach is going to be chalashing for that. They're going to be mamish desiring this. They're not going to be happy anymore with little disjointed pieces. They're not going to be happy anymore that my main happiness is when I come home and I go to work. It's miserable, but I do what I have to do. The generation before Mashiach is not going to be happy with that. The generation before Mashiach is going to want to find meaning and bigness and satisfaction in every little piece. So Rav Kook writes the following thing. Listen to this. He says, Hamidas hakashas hamavias l'adam lahamis erga prati lahagberes koch pulasai. Negative traits, historically speaking, negative traits that have been found within a person and within the collective Jewish people have been traits that make a person self-centered. Right? That the most terrible thing, the most negative trait that a person, that Chazal tell us exists, is gaiva. It's self-centeredness. That's the worst thing. It says such of kol item kulai hulakim miriva hashbasam. The whole world is sick from people like that. People that are self-centered. People that everything that they care about is all about themselves. Such people makes the world very, very difficult to live in. So he says. Such a person says, all exists is me. All that there is me. Such a person is very difficult to tolerate. Such a person would want the whole world to be gone, and to swallow the whole world, and only this person would exist. That's really what the person wants. And therefore, the main focus of Musar throughout the Jewish history has been to fix that problem. To make a person humble, and to make a person somehow get past thinking only about himself. That's been the main focus of Musar until now. Says Rav Kook. However, he says, Lahachnias gaiva, to subdue gaiva. Yeah? And he says like this. But he says as follows. Lu'umazeh. However, nowadays we see the opposite. It says Rav Kook, Lu'umazeh hini ha-musar ha-mitztarach el ma'alim. The musar that's needed nowadays to help our generation, says Rav Kook, the people of our generation are not small like they used to be. They're not small like they used to be. He says an unbelievable thing. He says that's the opposite. The altruism and the bigness and the wanting to fix the world and the wanting to see big things and all that drive that's found within the hearts and souls of the last generation, the problem that comes from such people is the opposite. That somehow they forget themselves. They want to fix the universe, but they forget that they also need to be fixed. That's their problem. It's like a famous word that, on Rosh Hashanah we all daven, Hashem rule over the whole universe. Please, all the nations of the world, all the Jews in Peru should somehow, all the Goyim in Peru should somehow know that there's a God in heaven. So the Bali Musa used to say, fine, you're davening about everyone in Peru and Ecuador and South Asia, whatever, all these places. But remember that you're also part of Hashem's kingdom, and Hashem has to rule over you too. There is such a thing that a person becomes so infatuated with seeing big things, with wanting big things, that they sort of forget the details of life. They sort of forget the details of what Yiddishkeit is demanding of them right now, right this moment, and what Hashem wants of them in their individual life. So he says as follows. Such a person could have a problem. They could feel everything. They feel everything. They feel everyone's pain. They're going to run to Africa to open schools. There's poor people right next door. There's kids that are starving right next door, but he's going to Africa. Fixing the world. You want to fix the world. There's such a thing. It didn't exist 100 years ago. It's a new phenomenon. So he says, "It's called tzara shalom u'chash." He feels the pain of every person. And he wants to help, and it's a good thing. It's a good quality. He wants to help. He wants to see. He wants to be big. But he forgets about himself. He forgets about you have to daven. You have to keep kosher. You have to keep kashrus. I'm busy. I can't worry about whether it has a hechsher or not. Right now, I'm fixing, Sri Lanka. You know what I mean? I'm bringing a tikkun that. Forget tikkunim, whatever. You have to eat kosher. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's such a thing where a person becomes so big that you forget about yourself. So it says Rav Kook, the musar that's necessary for our generation is no longer teaching a person, you see, that back in those days where the problem was haughtiness, so the solution was to instill within a person of how terrible you are, right? That was the solution, right? How do you fix gaiva? By telling you, what are you being a bal gaiva about? You know how miserable you are? That was musar, and that worked because the problem was gaiva. So the solution is showing how small and how terrible you are. But nowadays that's not the problem. The problem is not gaiva. The problem is trying to fix the world, trying to be everything, trying to do everything at once. All of Torah 1 foot. That's our problem. So what's the solution? The solution is not you're terrible, you're miserable. That's not the solution. The solution is you want to fix the world? Fix yourself, because within yourself the whole world is contained. That's what Musar nowadays is. Musar nowadays is that Jew, you recognize that you want to fix the world, and it's an unbelievable thing. But what you're missing the boat is that the Rizal, Rishon Ba'echai, the Rizal, what Torah teaches us is that when you tie your shoes properly, you're fixing the world. When you keep kosher, you're fixing the world. When you're learning a page of Gemara, when you're learning a pasuk in Chumash, you're fixing the universe. You don't have to go to Zimbabwe to fix the universe. You could be right here and open a pasuk in Chumash, and you're doing much more than you could do in Zimbabwe. That's the Musar value. That's what we need to hear. Not that you're miserable, you're small. That's not our problem. Is not gaiva. Our problem is that we forget how to fix. We want to fix it, but we don't know how. The answer is we have to fix the world by keeping Shulchan Aruch. But not just by keeping Shulchan Aruch in a disjointed way. Like I said, you can keep Shulchan Aruch in a way of chaos. The way of Torah is, the true way of our generation is to connect to Torah in the depths of what Torah is, in the depths of Torah as the world of Tikkun. It means keeping Shulchan Aruch, every detail of Shulchan Aruch, but connected to the soul of Torah at the same time. To believe that this is part of something bigger, and it's going to make me a bigger person. It's going to make me someone who's big, who wants big, who's dreaming big. That's what Torah is about. Let me end up with a quick story. I'm sorry, I'm going back. A quick mind. The Maisa goes that the Beis Halevi, Yosef Halevi Soloveitchik. So when he was young, I think when he was still a bacher, he heard about the greatness of one of the Gedolei Hadar. At that time, one of the Gedolei Hadar was Shlomo Kluger. Shlomo Kluger was one of the most brilliant minds, of all time, Shlomo Kluger. So the Beis Halevi heard about Shlomo Kluger, and he decided, you know what? This summer, whatever it is, I'm making a trip. I'm going to Shlomo Kluger to visit him. I want to meet such a person. So fine, he gathers his money together, and he realizes that he can't necessarily afford to get to Shlomo Kluger on his own. What he has to do is he has to have a side job on the way. So he hires himself out as like a helper for a horse and buggy. Right? So he's gonna hitch a ride. He'll pull his weight a little bit. He'll drive the horses every once in a while. Problem is, Beis Halevi is a genius. He's a big Talmud Chacham, even as a bacher, but he has no experience with horses. What does he know of horses? His hands are still soft. You know what I mean? It's not like he never worked a day of his life really in hard labor. You know what I'm saying? So he gets on the horse, and he gets in the horse and buggy. And at one point, the driver says, "Okay, Nu, I want to take a nap. Now it's your turn." Okay, fine. He never touched the reins of a horse before. He puts his hands on the horse, and he says, "Okay, pull this way." Okay, pulls that way. The horse goes crazy. He's terrible at it. He's mamish terrible at it. So the whole time the driver is like, they already made a deal, so he doesn't want to. The driver was a Jew, so he's not. I don't want to back out of the deal. But the whole time he's like putting the Beis Halevi down, like, he's such an idiot. What do you know? Driving a horse and buggy is no big deal. And somebody, I don't know what you don't know what you're doing. Like the whole time he's like giving him a hard time. Fine. Eventually he gets to Shlomo Kluger and says goodbye to this driver. Whatever. Hopes never to see him again. He goes to Shlomo Kluger's house. Yeah, they have a conversation. Shlomo Kluger recognizes what he has in front of him. The Beis Halevi, even as a young man, Beis Halevi was a genius of geniuses. So Shlomo Kluger, as the Rav of the shul, invites the young Beis Halevi to come give a drasha in his place, to give a drasha on Shabbos afternoon. Okay, it's an unbelievable kibbutz. So Beis Halevi comes to shul to give a drasha, and part of the community was this driver. And the driver goes to shul and sees how the Beis Halevi is the one giving the drasha, and he recognizes, oh my God, the whole time I was making this kid crazy, putting him down. He's like, one of the biggest Talmidei Chacham of the generation. So he feels really bad about himself. He goes over to Beis Halevi after. He says, "Please forgive me, Rabbi. I didn't know who I was talking to. Please forgive me." So Beis Halevi says, "No, I'm not going to. You did nothing wrong. Listen, if you told me that I don't know how to learn, that I'm an idiot in Torah, then you'd be wrong. But you told me that I'm an idiot, I don't know how to ride, I don't know how to drive, I don't know. You know what I'm saying? That's okay. I accept that you have your expertise in that area. I have my expertise in that area. And Shalom Yisrael. I don't have to be an expert in everything. It's okay that I'm an Amaris when it comes to driving a horse." That's the nice. This doesn't mean Sefiras. There is such a thing. Listen, it's impossible for a Jew to be perfect, to have everything, to be an expert in everything. Obviously, Yisrael means I have my expertise, I do my thing, I'm one part of this body called Klal Yisrael, and you're another part of the body called Klal Yisrael, and that's it. And you have your thing, I have my thing, Shalom Yisrael. And if your thing is not my thing, and my thing is not your thing, it's also okay. There's no such thing as one Jew that has everything, one Jew that's perfect. There's no such thing. To be zeicha very soon, to mechazik ourselves in these days of Sefiras Haomer, to work on our midas, our eyes, to see Avos Yisrael, to see other Jews for who they are as part of ourselves. If we do that, there's no question we'll merit the day, getting to Lag B'Omer, to get the Shuas, to receive the Torah, the real Torah, what Torah really is, the soul of Torah, to see everything in the universe as one, and eventually when enough of us do that on an individual level, we'll collectively see that with our eyes, with B'Yis Mashiach Tzidkenu.